let me just give you kind of a high level what Identity Matters is really about identity. So, it's about the matters of identity, and it's that identity matters. And you're going to see, we're going to go through some things more quickly that will actually be reinforced over the weeks to come. So you'll hear drill down on certain concepts. But to give you a high-level overview, I think what we found in our own personal lives was not having a solid identity, an identity built on our false self, the poser, the fig leaf person, created a lot of issues in our journeys. And, we didn't necessarily know how to address the personal things that had hurt us and brokenness as the path to really understanding who God is. And so we had a lot of distortions in who God is. And I think I've never met anyone that there are not distortions because of their experience, and people not having a mindset of how do I put some of those things under the cross so that I can be free of them. And so for me, I had a very distorted image of God. It took a while. I love Jesus. When I really got down to it, I didn't even like God. I would tell you, because I was a good Christian, that I love everybody and I really love God and Jesus loves me, all of that. But at a heartfelt level, I did not really understand all the big questions that you hear. And I love to study apologetics, so I'd give you the good theological answers to suffering and all kinds of things. But there were things that existed in my life that God sat there and watched, and I just didn't see that as a kind, loving Father. And I didn't know that until I started to heal and understand the consequences of some of the things that happened. And then I had to take a different lens and go back and reinterpret who God really is. And so that took years to just go, okay, where's the distortion? Let me see it. Where's the distortion? Let me see it. And honestly, I didn't really know who I was. I had rejected major parts of myself that had been traumatized. And so, and I think we see that kind of fragmentation. You'll understand it more as I share more of my story. But, I realized as God started to heal, I integrated. Like, big Colleen loved the little Colleen that was inside of her that sometimes threw tantrums, even in my adult body. Like, there was a place that I was stagnated because of the trauma and the hurts. And so even though that little girl was so pure, she was my true self, it was who God really wanted those aspects of me to be available for the purpose that he had for me. I shoved them, hid them, because I believe they created the sexual abuse I endured, yada, yada, yada. And so I became pretty fragmented. Now, I did all the counseling for the sexual abuse and all that kind of thing, and didn't understand that, thought I had put a lot of things behind me, but there was still this little girl in a lot of ways that was driving, some dysfunction in my life. And so, I realized that without truly knowing God and being safe in God's presence, there could never be the true self-definition of me. And I would continue to try to meet my own needs, and I would hide behind fig leaves, because if I was vulnerable with all of you, you weren't going to like me, you were going to abuse me, something bad was going to happen, and so I built all those walls. And, and then from that, this relationship with God and self, identity is birthed out of who God says we are. And we love to sing all the songs at church, right? Like, we've got some really good ones about who God says we are. Believing it at a heart level is a very different thing. And some of you sing You Say, and it's so beautiful. And some of you sat in that quiet moment and went, does God really love me that way? Is that really true? And so we say a lot of things, but unless it is felt in the heart, we can really, really struggle in Christian identity. So you're going to see we are going to have a focus on who is God. And we're going to introduce you to some ways of experiencing God, not just in your head, but in your heart, starting to build capacity, and some of you may be doing a lot of this already, but just really building the capacity, because the game changer for me was when I felt like, and I prayed for 2 years, Jesus, if I could really have a real intimate relationship with you, I want you to show up and have coffee with me like I do with my girlfriends. Because if I have coffee with my girlfriends, it's the most intimate time where we share, and I want it to be like that, you know. And people talk about things like that. I think they're a little crazy, some of where they go with that, so I don't necessarily want to look like that, but I want that. And so I prayed, because I was like, you know, I've been a Christian, you know, since I was little, but there has to be so much more. There has to be that kind of personal relationship. And I will tell you, the game changer, after 2 years, I don't know that he physically showed up and had coffee, but I walk constantly with an awareness of the presence, and I'm asking him all the time, like, what is that? What do you want me to do? And it has right-sized obedience. I still suffer constantly from my own self-deceit and wanting my own way. So God doesn't always win, but it is just a different way of being in the world. And I think it only comes when you really wrestle, you know, with true self-identity, which is linked, honestly, to the purpose. He planted you in your mother's womb, picked your mother, picked the time, knew you were going to be sitting in this classroom. You know, he was so intentional, and that purpose is linked to your true self. Your false self cannot go accomplish what God has ordained for you. And so I find this journey to be very important.